Welcome back, my fellow enthusiasts. Like I gave a little sneak peek last week, we are here with a new device from D-Nail called the Lotus. It's D-Nail's take on the desktop ball vape. Like many of us have seen in the community or on some of the other videos on my channel, a desktop ball vape is just a metal head with balls inside that gets hot, and you use that to vaporize the flower. Let's start from the top down. You have this all quartz top that's full of media. And the Lotus is what's called an injector style. So that has an 18mm fitting that goes on top of the bowl like this. Inside of the quartz top is full of media. D-Nail has a few options to get it sent out with. In one of its basic stock configurations, it has quartz with a few Shinju. For myself, I added all of these 2mm rubies, and we'll talk about why I do that in a little bit. Then, as part of the head, you have this handle, which is nice because it keeps you nice and far away from the heater. Then on the bottom of the head, you have these 3 slotted air jets that actually mix the flower all around inside of the bowl as you inhale, which is really cool and allows you to not have to stir in between hits, and also leads to a lot of airflow and great flavor. And how this works is you take the head and you put it inside of the universal torchless heating system and you let it sit there and get hot. And all the heat is transferred over to the media on the inside. As we're talking about the head, just a little bit of a warning. This device does need a little bit of extra attention when you're using it. Because the top is open like this, it is possible for the media to fall out while it's hot. So please, when you're holding this, pay attention, make sure not to tip it too much or set it down, or even when you're coughing, make sure you put it in a stand, because I've noticed that sometimes if I'm holding it while coughing and this shakes, I'm just scared that some of the media might pop out. So while this makes it really fun to science with and switch out media all the time and really experiment with what type of media you like inside, it's just something to take note that that is an open hole up there, and these little tiny balls get hot as lava. So let's go ahead and throw it in the heater and let it heat up while we talk about the other parts of the Lotus. Next up, you have the bowl to the Lotus. And this is a little bit different than some of the other injector bowls that we've seen because it has this big round edge. And while this is really fun, and I like the way that this is designed to let the flower fly around on the inside, it does come with a couple drawbacks. But I will say that those drawbacks, I mentioned them to D-Nail, and they said that they were gonna work on some great options to help solve some of these things. So let's talk about the bowl. Thing number 1 is it's got this glass screen thing on the bottom, which is great for airflow and really good for flavor. However, it does allow quite a bit of flower to pull through. So I went ahead and tossed a screen inside, but the 20mm screens I have sort of kind of fit. So that's what D-Nail is gonna help work on. They're going to make a bowl that supports the screen. But for now, I just tossed one in there, and that seems to have solved just about everything. The other thing with this really rounded bowl design, I've noticed it's a little difficult to clean out sometimes, and really to get it clean, it needs a little bit of an ISO bath. But small fries comparatively to how well it performs. Just know that I do suggest if you're gonna use this stock bowl, an ash catcher or some sort of dry catch is definitely needed. That being said, the Lotus does work with any 18mm injector style bowl like this one from Herborizer. It does not work with the Cannabis Hardware shovel head because the heater is too close to the flower for that to work. And we'll come back to this when I take a hit, and we'll see what the big difference between using something with flat walls like this and something with rounded walls like this. And really, it's gonna come down to preference because they're both really good and just have a little bit of a different vapor profile. That's really it for the Lotus. It's a very simple system that has great flavor. And since I brought up the Herborizer, let me just say I have been on the hunt for a vaporizer that can really contend with the flavor of the Herborizer. And up until this point, that just hasn't been a thing. The Lotus is one of the closest experiences flavor-wise to the Herborizer, and if not, has just a little bit better flavor because it's a 100% glass air path. And the Herborizer does have titanium in it. So depending on what media you put inside of the Lotus, you can get these amazing performance-filled, vaporous, just flavor hits. Well, enough talk, let's put some of this to use. I'm gonna grab my RBR and we'll start with the stock Lotus bowl. And as I fill this up, I would like to mention that the Lotus bowl has one of the biggest capacities of a desktop that I have seen to date. It is a full-on 2 to 3 scooper and easily handles 2 overflowing scoops. So let's go ahead and get 2 big scoops in there. And even with 2 scoops, you can see that the bowl is only about half full. So while the Lotus is inside the heater, I do use my handy dandy tea timer to time myself when I have just put it in. A couple notes about heat up time, that my setup with the rubies and all that 2mm and massive amounts of mass, it does take a little bit longer to heat up. That being said, it stays hotter longer. With the stock configuration, D-Nail suggests running between 1000 to 1100 degrees. I didn't want to have to change temperatures between my dabs and my dry herb experience, so I run my dabs at 900 on the new V1.1, and I wanted to stay that way. So I added more media inside and also made it 2mm rubies. That can take the 900 degree heat and really beef it up, but I sacrifice heat up quickness because of this. And to me, that is a worthy sacrifice, which makes this really fun to experiment with different types of media to achieve different heat up times and different temperatures. Now that the Lotus has been sitting in the heater for a bit, let's go ahead and give it a rip. All you do is pull the Lotus out of the heater, set it right on top, and let it rip. Holy, what a crazy amount of flavor. That was intense. And my coughing really is just from the crazy amount of terpenes and flavor. It's not really that heavy, dense smoke cough or that big, like, dense dab cough that you get. It's just so much flavor. It's almost kind of like just terpene cough, but wow, what a great experience. So when I'm done, if I'm gonna do another bowl, I just throw it back in the heater, or if I'm done, I go ahead and throw it on a glass stand like this, which is actually my Sherlock from Herborizer. D-Nail does have a glass stand from A1, and I do suggest picking that up if you're gonna grab a Lotus. So let's go ahead and empty this out to show you what the ABV looks like. Super even, nothing pyrrolized, nothing too dark. And actually, I think I could give this another run. So I'm gonna go ahead, throw this back in the bowl, and let's go ahead and give it another go. Okay, now that we've let some recharge time, let's go ahead and finish this off. One last big rip, and I would say that this is done. It's a nice golden brown color and not really tasting like popcorn at all, which is where I like to end up with these really flavor vapes. I wouldn't want to run this like a big heavy desktop to where I'm trying to achieve a dark coffee color, because that's just not what this is built for. This is really flavor to experience those terpenes and to get a lot of vapor that's just super flavorful. Now that we've seen how the D-Nail bowl works, let's go ahead and see what a standard injector bowl looks like. For this standard injector bowl from Herborizer, I can really only put about a scoop and a half for it to function correctly. So this is a little less volume, and it reacts a little differently on how it spins around in there, but it still works really well. And I do like this bowl because a little less flour gets pulled through the rig. The other thing, using this bowl, I've noticed I don't have to leave it in as long, and I can run this at a little bit of a lower temperature just because of the way the bowl is constructed. There's not as much airflow that goes through this. So you can run lower temperatures, because with the more airflow, you need a little bit of a higher temperature to sustain the vaporization heat. So now that I've let the head recharge a little bit, and the more time it spends in the heater, the less time it needs to recharge, we'll go ahead and throw this on top, and you'll watch how this reacts differently. With this one, you watch the flour actually compact down instead of spinning around so much. And while that is a much hotter, denser rip, it leads to a little bit of hot spotting just in the center, so I do like to stir this configuration. But even with a stir, I can see from those couple rips, we got pretty close to done. So this is a really fun vape to science with, because you can easily change out the media or change the bowl to really change your experience. Well, those were some amazingly tasty rips, and I've had a lot of fun playing around with the Lotus. And this is definitely something that's gonna stay on my desktop, especially because I can use it with something that I already use for my dabs. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay lifted. Psst, come hang out with us on Discord.